There we go. We're back in action. I'm sorry. I guess we'll have to take it from the top.
Yeah. So I was hoping to begin with how you came to develop both the big picture history sense of computing and also a practical, uh, ability to code in the modern world,
Hmm.
because those are somewhat rare to coincide in the same person.
Aha. Yes. Well, the secret is Marshall McLuhan, but that doesn't mean anything if I don't unpack it a little bit. um, so back in 2023, I flew down to Boston, and gave a presentation in front of a bunch of free software enthusiasts, and I mean free software like liberation, save us from the big tech companies and their proprietary grips into our lives, right? This is the people who made the software license that Linux uses, the Linux kernel. It's not just open source. It frees end users to be able to understand their computer. And when I was there, I made a presentation that went back like 500 years to the first monk who created a ledger. It created the system of specifically double
Double entry
cross-referencing.
accounting.
Yes. Sorry, say it again.
Double entry accounting.
Double entry. That's what I'm looking for. Which is, I think, our new crypto friends appreciate what a ledger is. This technology, though, is really the double entry auditable ledger is only about like 500 years old, 600 years old. I forget the exact date. It was 3 years ago, but as a technology, but it's an abstraction.
And it's a very tricky one to understand. I've heard the word double entry accounting for decades, but something recently actually made it click for me, which, like, every time I tried to learn it, I tried to I mean, I never went to an accounting textbook. I tried to invent it for myself from first principles. And I made the mistake of trying to say, like, okay, I spent this money and got this thing. And those are the two entries. Like, oh, the money is going one direction, the things are going the other direction. And that's not actually how the abstraction works. It works with two different accounts. And the thing isn't really present. It's like the double entry if you buy a bolt at a hardware store is like negative the price of the bolt for me and positive the price of the bolt for the hardware store. And the accounting doesn't actually say anything about the bolt moving or changing hands.
Right. Yes, because the ledger is tracking the flow of money.
And the double purpose to make it checkable on both sides.
There's this inherent redundancy. You might think of it as in data, we might call it parity data in data science. That just when you have this redundancy, you can cross-reference and it all adds up in the end. Yes. So I have spent a long time looking at the history of computers in the context of the history of abstraction. That was what my presentation was about in Boston. And before we had computers, I mean, the number one business application for computers as they were becoming commercialized in the 1950s was accounting. That's what they did. They were able to handle payroll and handle things in banking. Other purposes were like astronomical, but it was mostly economics. And so the underlying technology of what computers were used for has sort of remained the same, and cryptocurrency is just one more evolution of this ledger technology, which you could say civilization, or at least the free market world of the West, where people become rich via what's that term that the aristocrats would use, the parvenu nouveau riche merchant class of people who showed up and had no business manners, but had enough money to buy their way into polite society, right? Like
Mhm.
the whole upset of the last 500 years has been this flow of money, and it's built upon these different media, the media of the book, the media of calculators, of punch cards, and these physical systems of tracking um, ledgers, and bank accounts and payrolls and investments and whatnot. Um, stock tickers. Um, um, Hell, even banknotes. You have to think of banknotes as a physical technology. Which replaced carrying gold around everywhere with you or other precious metals. So yeah, so I've been studying the work of Marshall McLuhan for about 10 years now, very heavily. His archives are here in Ottawa at the National Archives, like his personal
Mm.
documents and whatnot. So I can visit those and dig into it. And Marshall McLuhan was famous for saying the medium is the message, and we're entering a global village. If you've heard either of those phrases, then you know who Marshall McLuhan is. And in both cases, they apply to exactly what we're doing here on the Vibe Coder community, because computers are the medium in which we're working in now, LLMs and cryptocurrency. And these underlying media are going to affect us a lot more than anything we do with them. And furthermore, we're doing this in an interconnected planet where you and I can make acquaintance casually through this website called Twitter and find ourselves chatting it up, um, on a whim. Um, uh, how to stay human and how to stay in control and in possession of your agency is
Yes.
obviously a sort of terrifying existential question that lots of people are grappling with, and I have my own way of doing that, and hope that uh, that the best way to help people is to demonstrate and live by principles which give one a little bit more freedom in a world which seems to try to take it away.
Yeah, so that brings up a question that I've been wondering about, especially with your, the audience of that talk, who are free software people who are very concerned with understanding and controlling the machines that they own. And this is a big question, is like, do you own your software? Well, if Twitter or Facebook can change it, then you don't, because you can't do anything about it. They own the code. It's just running locally on your machine.
Hmm.
So I really liked your metaphor that was on your slides in that talk, where you had the sort of blue boxes as the solid layers, and then there was a pink cloud whenever there's something that you don't understand. And so if you're a computer hacker, you can understand, you know, the software through a certain number of layers, but then there's a black box, say the BIOS, and you don't know how it works, and that interfaces with the hardware. And so the natural instinct of these Linux guys is to like own and control and understand a full path through the layers.
Hmm.
And
I'm
that,
showing the slides to our viewers now. So we're looking at one of these slides of the stack here.
yes, so you did some really interesting things with those slides and explained how like a breakthrough is when you turn the cloud into the block. And also like you can think of the causality as flowing both ways through them. But I mean, it seems from the outside, it seems like the big concern with vibe coding is that you don't understand how it works. You don't understand how the LLM is coming up with the
Mm,
reply. And so I'm wondering how you think about that in using them yourself.
yeah. The like as to the purpose of VibeKoder. When I made it, I just wanted a small, fast desktop tool to converse with LLMs like ChatGPT. And then I realized that no, chat is a high level illusion. You're not talking to somebody. The fact that I say something and then ChatGPT says something back to me and we're having a conversation, that's fake. Because an LLM is not a person, it does not talk, it does not hold conversations. An LLM is equivalent to what a globe might be. Again, 500, 600 years ago. I remember some cartoon I watched as a kid, some fake version of some fake story of Christopher Columbus where it was a musical, a crappy straight to VHS movie, and his workshop, they kind of had him as this like Michelangelo figure with all this stuff everywhere, and he had all these different globes, and one was a square, and one was an octagon, and he was trying to, and then he finally found the spherical world, and aha, the world's round, and he's holding this world in his hand for the first time, right? And then he decides to get on a boat and travel across it, right? And this idea of like holding a globe um, for the first time and realizing that the world is round and that all this world around you and this terra firma you're standing on and the horizon is here. And you can look at it from outside. I'm like, I'm here. And there's a level of recursion here to like hold your total environment in your hand and be outside of it and be looking at it from a God's eye view top down. Um, Another metaphor I've used is how
Wait,
streaming and video cameras everywhere, and the fact that anyone can be caught on camera in public and go viral is a lot like having a sea monkey collection. You order through the magazine, the comic book, and you put the brine shrimp in your tank. And the cartoon has all these little sea monkeys, these little purple and pink people walking around apparently in the tank, right? And you got your sea monkey. He's like, oh, that's so cute. And then you put on your sea monkey costume and you go outside, and now you're inside your own tank, right? And like, because that's kind of what we're doing. You see people in public on your screen, and then you go outside, and now you're inside the computer under the surveillance of all these cameras that you were just watching 5 minutes ago. Doug Rushkoff,
oh, okay. Yeah,
yeah,
I wasn't quite seeing the globe metaphor.
okay. Doug Rushkoff talks a lot about how the first major time this happened was the O.J. Simpson car chase in 1993 or 1994 when O.J. Simpson is fleeing the police and he's in his car chase through L.A. and news helicopters are like flying over the car chase, and people at home are watching this car chase on TV going, oh my god, he's about to drive past my house, and they run outside their house and wave at the helicopter as it's going by, capturing OJ Simpson drive by their house, right? Like people were running out of their house onto their television screens.
Hmm.
um
And that's sort of the comparison is that the LLMs are scraping the words that we say
mhm.
on the internet.
Yeah, if the dictionary is like a static list of words, but an LLM is like an object that we can now basically in a sense hold in our hand, that is the relation of all of our words to all of our other words, as dictated by their normative usage. It's our language instead of the environment that we grow up in hearing. It's our language as a static object we hold and can stand outside of now, and it's a resonant instrument, like it's a percussion instrument, like a bell or a drum. Right? You strike it a certain way at a certain angle with a certain amount of force. Whatever you throw at it, it resonates something back. Right? You tap your snare drum lightly, you whack it hard, edge, center, right? Different shaped bells in the clock tower give off different tones, like monks spent hundreds of years forging certain shapes of bells to create certain, beautiful noises. An LLM is something that we strike with our words, and something echoes inside of it and comes back out at us. So what code so
So how
code is
does that help us trust the
Mhm.
code that it gives
We have
us?
to trust. Well, yeah, this is obviously now that the internet is flooded with AI generated text, you're sort of getting some analog degradation here, right? But all the training data we have to assume on average was written by humans speaking somewhat intelligently, and the code it was trained on has to have come from code from working computer applications that were running and not garbage, half broken things, right? If most of the words on
Yeah,
the
well,
internet,
most of 90% of everything is crap. How do you deal
90%
with
of
that?
everything is average, and is 90% of everything is crap. It's hard. You see,
Can
yeah,
you
yeah.
specify a model that only is trained on a few really great things that you
Doesn't work
specify?
that way because you can't have a few things. Maybe maybe there's potential. Uh, maybe you have to treat the normative average voice of all of our collective works as as potentially, depending on what you put into it, what you how you strike this instrument with the right prompt by a person who with the right incantation
Hmm.
can say things which resonate inside and bring out high class refined echo back out again, right? So the language of I'm a prompt engineer is very sterile, and yet I do believe that there's poetry. um there I think that LLMs respond to poetry. I think they respond to metaphor, and I think the better your poetry and the better, the more resonant your metaphors are, uh uh the better results that you get. I When I was
So,
designing my calendar program, I was using all sorts of metaphors. This is a tool for people to take control of their time like a computer developer. It's an IDE for time management, which means right. It's
what's an
like
IDE?
an IDE is an integrated development environment. So when you're writing computer code, you're putting it in a text editor. But an IDE is like a souped up text editor that has buttons to compile it and buttons to show you
So it's
your
got multiple
libraries.
windows. It's got like the
Yeah,
code and the compiled code.
yeah, and you see an IDE for the first time, and it's terrifying because there's a million options, and you don't know where to start, and you have to learn. You have to read the manual. It takes weeks and months to master this program, but once you master it, now you're a power user, and you know everything, and you can use a couple shortcuts to do all your work with, right?
Hmm.
So modern calendars are made. They haven't. They're made for Oh, I put my address or I put my event in, and there it is. It's on my calendar. The end. Right? We haven't created power software for people to take control of their time. And
Well, hold on. I want to go back a little bit to the poetry and analogy.
oh, sure.
Can you remember some other sort of uh, surprising literary moves or phrases you used in getting it to do something you wanted? That
Oh yeah. Well, VibeKoder itself was largely seeded by this LLMs are a percussion instrument metaphor that I've just brought up.
Hmm.
Um and again, it's funny because I'm creating computer software, and my prompts have all these have these sort of metaphors in them, right? Uh
You tried any stringed instrument metaphors?
Mallarmé is a um, that would be good. Mallarmé, the French symbolist poet, often evokes the image of a feather running against a violin string
Huh.
as his pinnacle of the delicacy of
Ooh.
the human mind. Uh, uh, let's see here. Oh yeah, hell, I could pull up some source code and look at it. But yeah, my goal specifically with the LLM was to get out of this metaphor of the chat interface because the chat interface is a high level illusion.
Right.
Right? Humans are really good at anthropomorphizing inanimate objects,
Hmm.
and the LLM exploits that susceptibility uh, in
Yeah.
order to make these products attractive and familiar and feel safe and easy to
Wh-
use. All software is sold on the basis of oh no, it's nothing crazy, it's not gonna, right, it's just one more slight thing that's helping you out, right? We're not upsetting your whole world or reality. It's just one more tool in your tool belt, right? We're just gonna work it into your life slowly and hope not to freak you out, right? Um, and that's been again. I've got the books going back to the 70s and 80s about how to introduce computers into the office in the when in the 1980s when IBM was rolling out the PC and they were killing off their typewriter division. And they did a lot of psychological research into how do we get all these secretaries to throw away their safe electric typewriter and sit down in front of this word processor and stare at a CRT and memorize all these arcane commands. And they realized, well, first of all, step one, we have to get rid of the manual. They got this thick ass manual, and they're like, nope, no one's gonna read it. We have to make learning this word processor more like a video game. We're gonna disable because the only thing that people actually do on computers where they have this intrinsic motivation to try and learn it is play games and play around. So we need to make learning the computer like playing around, and give them hints that pop up or a card of like, hey, try this. And every video game you play has got a tutorial system that starts you off with a few with just
What,
a limited set of features, right? Okay, go forward, go back, look up, look down. No, here's how you shoot. And then they unlock more and more features, right? That's what IBM was doing with their word processor in the 80s. Okay, we've added this thing to your menu. Try that. Oh, now you can mail merge. Oh, now you can do this, right? Like tutorial demos, all sorts of things. Because two phone calls to the 1-800 number support desk wiped out the profits of a sale of any piece of software. So if the user bought a piece of software and made two phone calls to the free 1-800 number, boom, there go all your profits have just evaporated. So
yeah.
because right, so the work of making computers easy to use has been very well figured out, right? Like people underestimate the amount of psychology that's manifest in the material object that is their computer interface and the point and click and how the program works, and you install
Mhm.
a new phone app and it puts you through the little tutorial thing like that. It's not a given that that's just how computers work. Computers have actually been stretched way out of, like contorted way out of how they actually work into this baroque shape, this artwork we call the object oriented interface and the graphical user interface that we use today. And understanding that is important to getting beneath it to what's really going on. Same way that understanding that you're not chatting with an LLM is language concretized as an object, is how you get away from this illusion that oh, my AI girlfriend is, my 2D waifu is the only girl for me or whatever it is,
Yeah.
right?
So I have a little hesitation about, you're saying that it's the chat interface that is get encouraging people to anthropomorphize the other side of the chat. But
Hmm.
I would put it as, language itself. We assume that language always came from a human mind because that is how it got into books and onto
Hmm.
signs and everywhere we've ever seen it before in writing.
Hmm.
So so it seems deeper than the chat interface. And how can we get, and in some sense it did, it passed through the LLM and was originally in the trading data somewhere,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it's been sort of unknowably altered through that process where we can't
It's
check.
like we've animated the statistical relation between words or between subcomponents of words,
So what
even.
does animated mean there?
Uh, Yeah, you and I, by speaking to each other, even though it's mediated, we are animating words as humans always have, orally.
Hmm.
You're hearing me and I'm hearing you, and we're speaking, and the words are part of this gestural embodied communication. You're looking at my face, I'm looking at your face. The words are integrated into our communing as two humans. and the audience who's watching us is communing with us as well. The tone of my voice, all the stuff, right? Like the performance of my speaking is an embodied whole thing. And then with books, we abstract the body right out of it, and it's a stream of words that are static on a page. And after the writer has written them, everyone else who reads them is now visiting the past to read this
Hmm.
book. The older the book gets, the more back in time you go
Yeah,
when you read it.
they're
Um,
reanimating a part of the writer's mind.
yes, yes. Uh, the phonetic alphabet is a recording technology for the sort of sounds that humans can make with their mouth. All the vowels and consonants are a way of abstracting the sounds, all the different things you can do, ba ba ka da, right, into a physical static medium, which can then be reanimated and played back by the person who reads them out loud. So like the phonetic alphabet is a tape recorder technology. Books statically record these things. A book that no one reads has nothing in it. It's tinder for keeping you warm. It's toilet paper for wiping your ass. But if you don't read a book, there's nothing in the book. There's only something in the book,
Hmm.
in a physical book, when eyes are pouring across the letters and making sense of it,
Hmm.
right? We think, oh, look at this library full of information. Well, if you don't go in there and read a book, then that library's got nothing in it. It's a bunch of,
Hmm.
it's a bunch of dead matter, right? Now, what we've done with LLMs is we've taken this dead matter and now it is animate. Like something about the human quality, the
Mm.
the thought inside of it, which is largely abstracted from the full human.
Okay, so what if, we threw that stuff out for a good reason, and the LLMs can't understand that reason?
I'm sure there's lots of bad ideas out there on the internet that have integrated their way into the corpus, slightly tilting the odds that one word follows another to say all sorts of horrible, misguided, and or plainly incorrect nonsense. Absolutely. It's not a what if, that's absolutely the case. Every harebrained idea that has come up and been recorded and ended up in the training data of an LLM is somehow, got its finger tilting the scale one way or another. On the same time, it's pessimistic to focus on that when, if you believe that most people are trying to sound smart and be accurate and seem kind or seem ethical or altruistic or are trying to make sense of the world, and our science mostly works and explains most things okay, and if most of the things written online are people striving to be accurate and helpful and useful, then cumulatively that makes the training data on the whole actually interesting, useful. um yeah, I do believe that that's the case. I think that most of the books written are people at least trying to be correct or trying to be authentic or like being as honest as they can.
I'm still not seeing how the language version of this compares to the code version of this.
The code version is so much simpler to explain. Um, it's very difficult to write a computer program. You write it, and then it crashes, or there's a bug and it doesn't even compile, and then you fix it, and then it crashes and it doesn't compile, and you fix it again, and then it's running, but it doesn't quite do what you want to do, and so you add more features, and then those fail. And in the iterative process of debugging and building software, you end up with finally a bunch of source code files that compile into a working product. And it was very, very difficult to refine that until it worked. And the test is in the pudding. Like this code, it finally actually perfectly maps to the internal guts of this very complex machine that does a million times things a second, right? And we finally got exactly the right words in the right order to run on this computer. And look, it's demoing, it's running, like it works. Try it, poke. Oh my god, it works, right? Most code on the internet works. It's been battle tested, it's been refined. The internet is not full of broken code that no one can compile, because no one wants to upload broken code that no one can compile because it's useless. No one
Well,
wants to
when
share
I
their garbage half finished shit. People want to share their stuff that works or the stuff that's almost working. So the training set for working code is like 99.999 to 6 decimal places working functional code.
so at this point, I have to ask, what does working mean?
Oh, very good. Yes.
Because, you know, my experience with downloading code from the internet and trying to run it is that there's incompatibility problems and I
Mhm.
can't figure them out.
Sure. Sure. When that's not that's an inconvenience, which is the price of freedom, my friend. You see, Rusty, back in the early 80s, Apple was going to take over the world with their vertical control of everything. They controlled the hardware, they controlled the software. They had one machine, you wrote for that machine. It was called the Macintosh, and that right. And the Macintosh ROM was the same from like 1984 straight up until about like 1997, 1998 when they finally threw it all out and Steve Jobs came back and they pivoted to OS 10, OS X. Um, but right, so Mac, it's like they own the hardware. There's only a few models and they're all compatible. That's what IBM did in the 1960s when they centralized their System 360 architecture. IBM was took over the computer world in the 1960s with the IBM 360 because you could buy a small IBM 360 computer to start your business, and then when you scaled up and got big, you could buy a medium-sized IBM computer, and all your software you wrote for the small one worked on the new one. All right, this idea of cross compatibility across hardware architectures by a intermediary stable API uh,
Right.
was the right, and that's the discontinuity that you saw in my graphs here. That's what I was talking about in my talk to the Free Software Foundation. I'm actually going to pull that back up
I
to
remember
show
that.
people in the watching this here. Yeah, so the that's what Windows is. It's a um for your specific hardware, your specific video card, your specific sound card, or your specific chipset, there's a specific driver. And then Windows is the general thing that uses that driver to then allow any general program to run on any Windows computer in spite of the fact that they all have different hardware. It's an
Hmm.
envelope of a stable API which creates a black box, an event horizon like a black hole where the program you make cannot see beyond this false horizon. It just knows that it's in a Windows environment and it'll just do the Windows thing and it'll just talk to the safe, stable Windows architecture and it'll never care what kind of video card you have. It just knows that it's talking to DirectX and DirectX will take care of whatever video card that I
So
you know.
that's interesting because I didn't realize you're saying that Windows is both, you know, the human comprehensible GUI
Mhm,
and the much lower layer, like interaction between software and the hardware,
mhm.
or between a particular program that runs on Windows that then has to use
Yeah, yeah, see,
hardware.
that's what PC that's what IBM did when they made the personal computer to compete with the Macintosh or the Apple II at the time. They opened up they said, "Okay, screw it. We're not gonna make the hardware. We're gonna open up the specs, and any company who wants to manufacture hardware to specs can bid to be part of the PC." So all sorts of different companies, right? We're not going to have the official IBM video card alone. We're going to allow people to swap out other companies' video cards, and as long as the video card talks the system through a stable API, then anyone can make PC peripherals or PC components. So yeah, and then drivers are this thing which bridge the singular OS to the wide the wide variance of possible underlying hardware upon which the OS runs. I mean, just look at the history of plug and play. The fact that you can take a USB key or any USB device and just plug it into a USB port was a goddamn miracle in 1995, 1996, and it barely worked. And at the time, the popular epithet was to call it plug and pray. because there's a good chance you just plug in something randomly and your computer just crashes, right? But now we take
Mhm.
for granted that everything can just, oh, I got a thing. Here's what I do: I plug it into the port. That's the complexity to have all these different manufacturers from different companies just look at a spec and say, as long as I do it this way, it's going to work with everyone else's stuff. I don't need to talk to them. We're all converging on the specification. And the history of specifications and metrics actually comes out of um, World War I, and um, um, largely out of Germany during the rationalization movement, and spread to the rest of the world in World War II. There's a
Yeah.
that was a movement called rationalization, and largely it was like, oh no, this American truck broke down somewhere, in Normandy, and uh, and we can't fix it because the Americans use different gauges of bolts and nuts than we do here in Europe, right?
Mhm.
So we need the Americans to ship a boat across the ocean full of nothing but nuts and bolts and spare parts, right? And if that boat gets hit, then now all of our tanks are like are on their last legs, right?
Do
Like
you
the
have a
idea.
book about that? That's something very interesting to me. Do you have
Oh
a
yeah, it's
reference?
fantastic. It's Roberts Brady's. Yeah, this is a great guy to look into. Robert Brady's Automation, Organization, and Society. And actually, chapter 8 of this book was very heavily, I'll say it, ripped off by Marshall McLuhan for his chapter on automation and understanding media. Um, Robert Brady is considered, actually, his more famous book. The book that put Brady on the map actually is this: The Spirit and Structure of German Fascism. Because Brady was writing his doctoral thesis, his economics doctoral thesis for Berkeley in like 1926, 1927, 1928, around there. And he went to Germany and he spent years in Germany studying their entire industry. He wanted to figure out how Germany came back from World War I and how they so quickly rebuilt their economy and their manufacturing base and their supply chain from primary industry through manufacturing and whatnot. So he wrote his doctoral thesis, a thick ass book that I've also got, on the German economy. Immediately afterwards, the entire apparatus that he wrote about was taken over by the Nazis. And then in like the early 30s, he writes this, which is like the first book, detailed analysis of the entire German economic structure, because he was like the only guy in the world, English speaking, who had the in-depth knowledge to actually analyze the situation at that level. So yeah, very interesting guy.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It
that's
it
so yeah. But he talks. He really studies the apparatus of standards, and
Uh-huh.
and that ties into what I was talking about, right? These abstract systems, and computers are sort of the base for all these abstract systems, which are alive and comprise the superstructure that we live in, civilization tier.
So that's been my experience with technology is that, uh, most of the problems are compatibility problems, both
Hmm.
with hardware and software. I mean,
Hmm.
the bolts in France is a great example, but really that's just everywhere. And I mean, I've been having my own compatibility problems lately, but I won't burden you with them. But so how do I'm interested in, okay, what can you do with these tools? And
Hmm.
can they, like the phone call to the 1-800 number, destroying the profits, that's fascinating because, in my experience, the way you get through technology problems is just with like the bulldozer of human will and determination to get the thing working.
You play around, you mess with it until it finally works. You've written a lot on having the right tools, it seems. I
Mhm.
saw the high level synopsis of your work and it resonated with me instantly. But you talk a lot about the focus on having a proper workshop with all the things you need at hand, so as to sort of control and be responsible for and maintain your whatever it is you need to survive or to live, or your right to fix a world which seems to be succumbing to entropy and falling apart. So I was really curious, are there analogies to what we're talking about here to more like what is it more specifically that you are talking about in regards to, having the right workshop as a man?
Well, um, I mean, I'm not at a level where I can write software, but I use software, of course.
Mhm,
I make, you know, recording, audio and video recordings. I take
mhm,
pictures. I
mhm,
write blog posts that have words and video. I have a website.
mhm.
And so, all these things you just run into like many compatibility problems in the process of doing the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm wondering if can vibe coding help me with that, not with writing my own new program. I mean, maybe someday.
Well, I believe, especially with media, that understanding the basics of how media files work, the container formats, which we say interleave or or mux together the various codec streams, um, is the level at which media files ought to be understood by people who work in those domains. So if you know the difference between uh, a Matroska or an MP4 container compared to an MP4 stream, which is encoded in that container or contained in that container to encode the video such that you can extract and remux that stream into other things. And that's all like command line tools. It's almost, you're right, like
Hmm.
manipulating media on a computer entails understanding some fundamentals, or else you're just dragging a video into your video editor and cutting it up and then re-encoding it again and losing all this data because you've just taken this thing and then like a VHS tape, you tape the tape and then you make a tape of the copy and you make a copy of the copy and you degrade the quality of the thing that you're working on, right? And when you're just playing around, um, you can do a lot of damage to the fidelity of your media streams, right? Yeah, so like understanding the domain that you're working in, I say it, and I know I come off as I find a hard time talking about this stuff with because I understand it's difficult to learn these fundamentals. LLMs are a fantastic way to learn the fundamentals of all of this stuff because if you have an extremely precise question about what's going wrong, like in the last 2 years only, LLMs have been like the most helpful troubleshooting tool for figuring out how to get through software conundrums or figuring out how a new tool works. Um, because it's basically a faster way of searching your problem on DuckDuckGo or Google or whatever and reading through the forums of some guy who had the same problem you had 5 years ago and hoping that the fix that they found on that web forum
Right.
still
That's what
applies
I always
now.
do.
Right. But yeah, LLMs basically, yes, as a chat client, you can talk to them about your issues and they're fantastic for solving them. And I use them every day. Now, again, as the vibe coder, as someone who's trying to make software, I'm trying to create integrated software that all talks to each other, and yet has the right fundamentals for the domain that I'm working in, which is calendar, objects, events on a calendar, to-do lists, notes and memos, um, and I'm working on this calendar program I've been working on for the last year, and I've restarted it 6 times as I've relearned the fundamentals of programming. Like, listen, I'm not a programmer in any sense that is respected by programmers. I don't go home and sit down and type code for hours a day. I haven't done it for years. What LLMs have let me do is get back into it in almost a gamified sort of way where I'm making broad leaps and I understand what it's doing, but I didn't have to write it myself, right? Um, but I'm not just trying to make a program to do a thing. I'm trying to make a program with the forward thinking of knowing that in the future this is going to integrate with something else that I haven't written yet. And I'm
Hmm.
constantly telling you the LM or all right, design this sync pipeline to sync my calendars on my computer to my calendars on the cloud. But remember that this pipeline might one day be a three-way sync. We're not
Mhm.
just comparing the records here to the records there. Eventually, we'll add a third partner in here, and then it's going to get complicated. So allow the code, the expandability, the openness to eventually become a three-way sync or a four-way sync, right? And that's a much more complicated problem to solve. But I want to get a head start on allowing that room for that expansion later on. So the thinking ahead and knowing where you're going um, in the initial plan, right? A stitch in time saves nine. I guess I'll say, as the cliche goes, right? That's that's what I'm trying to do with the code that I make. Because as you said, compatibility between things is the biggest problem. Hey, all my stuff is locked up in this program. In this program, the software company has got a financial incentive to keep you using their program. They don't want to give you an ability to export it into some, open format that lets you go move to a competitor's program or to some free program. They want to keep you locked up in their business, paying monthly for their software as a subscription. Nothing works with anything else by design. Your life is bound up in the proprietary intellectual property of some company who does not want to let you go and really rushed you into agreeing to their terms of service. In the first 5 seconds of your touching their software, um, before locking you in, right? So
So
that's sort of
so
the
so how
ideological
is
angle.
what you write with VibeKoder different from that? Because
Well,
it's like some of that is, yeah, they're trying to hide everything, they're trying to lock you in, but some of that is just every program is unique and it's hard to make unique things fit together.
this gets back to their standardization. There are open file formats
Hmm.
that the world runs on.
Yeah. Is there like a big, good canonical list of those? Is like, this is something I wonder about all the time. It's like,
Mm,
can I trust a format? It's like, yeah, I've
mhm,
been, keeping saving files since I was a teenager.
mhm, mhm.
I really trust JPEGs and PDFs. They haven't changed this whole time. They still work. I
Yep,
can
yep.
still open them. But,
Mhm,
I've never heard of lots of things. I've never heard of lots of things that are old and durable. I
mhm.
don't know how to make that evaluation. And so I would love a really good list of those.
Yeah, yeah. We've taken to formalizing these as MIME types, MIME.
Hmm.
Um, that if you were to look at a list of popular MIME types, which is sort of like file types, but also of the sort that are made into email attachments and thus need to be compatible across different computers. That's the
Hmm.
origin of the phrase. Um, right. Yeah, open standards and open specifications. Like a lot of them come from what's that group? The ISO standards, ISO, the
Mhm.
International Standards Organization. A lot of file types are encoded there. A lot of them are released as RFCs, which are the official communiques or memorandums of the computer engineering groups, like the IETF. And yeah, actually, the history of file formats in general entail everyone cooperating for interoperability. Okay, we all agree that this is what a HTML files. This is how the web works. When you make a website, you follow the HTML specification issued by the W3C. This is HTML version 3.0. And so Netscape implements HTML 3.0. Microsoft implements HTML 3.0 in Internet Explorer. Opera implements HTML 3.0. And then Microsoft comes along and breaks something and makes it their own way, and then everyone goes, "Oh, my website's broken. I got to fix it," and they fix it according to the way that only works in Internet Explorer. And now the website works in Internet Explorer, and it doesn't work in Opera or Netscape, right? And now everyone starts hacking in their own proprietary features and going against the specification, and web developers start pulling their hair out and have to decide, will my website work in Internet Explorer or will it work in Netscape? Who has the bigger
The,
market share, right? Right.
the specifications themselves can break.
The specifications themselves are sabotaged by dirty players. Microsoft is famous for paying people off on standards bodies. The Microsoft Office file formats are the only approved file format that meets accessibility guidelines such that, they're useful to blind people or whatnot, right? There's all these regulations that if our government with, billions of dollars, is going to pay for software, it needs to meet these specifications. It has to work for blind people. It has to have, this, it has to have that. And then Microsoft paid off the people who wrote the specifications, or those people left their job in Microsoft to go join this governmental board that wrote the specifications, and then it just so happens that Microsoft's got the only product on the market that is legal for your government to use and buy. Like, huh? And then Germany gets a new government, and Germany changes the specifications to allow OpenOffice or LibreOffice to qualify, and then the entire German government spends $1 billion training all of their office workers, their government workers, on how to use open office. And then 2 years later, a new government comes in and like, okay, we're switching back to Microsoft Office. And then they spend $2 billion more to switch all the
Yeah.
computers back to Microsoft Office again. And it's all
There's
on the politics
there's
of file
bureaucratic
format.
horrors beyond our comprehension.
Yeah. And and I mean, if you think that the economy runs on market fluidity, and liquid capital sloshing back and forth, and civilization is built on the busy work of paying one guy to dig a hole and another guy to fill it in again. I think this is the broken windows fallacy. Then this is all great for the economy, but it's absolutely nonsense in the larger scheme of getting
Yeah,
anywhere
well,
with developing.
if you want to have software that just works.
Mm, mm-hmm. Yeah, software that just works doesn't sell a new version next year.
Hmm. So, so to get a little more practical, how it sounds like that I can, in fact, use LLMs in sort of I mean, my best experience using computers was when I had routine access to a help desk
Hmm.
and I was learning LaTeX and I, had to go and ask for help multiple times a week. And I actually was able to learn it. I've since forgotten it because it's changed. But so I remember that's my data point for like what I'm picturing with VibeCoder, where you've got one window that has the code, and then it
Hmm.
runs or typesets in another window, and you see the outcome.
Hmm.
Are there other windows in the program besides that?
Yes. There's a single button to open up the transcript, or like the file that encodes the whole conversation. There's means to export individual, I call them slices of the conversation, and there are in development is an ability to go back and fork the conversation and have a different conversation from an earlier point, such that you end up with a non-linear flow. So I'm integrating the ability to go back in time and have conversations that branch off into different routes,
Hmm.
without losing the original conversation.
Okay, so at the baseline, now I'm seeing three windows. You've got the code, the output, and the conversation about the code.
Hmm.
Is
Hmm.
that right?
Yes, and if I introduce agentic uses, which means it's like the conversation starts automating itself. If I could have it so that one part of vibe coder is like the doer that knows what needs to be done, and it instructs other LLM agents what to do, and that's how Claude code works. That's what agentic LLM programs do. You're not just chatting to the computer. The computer's You build a hierarchical structure of multiple LLM sessions, which are all really just the same LLM getting struck with different conversational halves to talk to itself.
Hmm.
It's sort of equivalent to time sharing on a or which right there's it,
On an old mainframe?
on an old mainframe. Yeah, yeah. The way that multiple users could use the same computer was that they each had their own spot in memory, and the CPU would just dance around them. I'm going to help you for half a second, then I'm going to help you for half a second, then I'm going to help you for half a second, and each person feels like they're using the computer privately, but they're sharing the computer, which is just very, very quickly dancing around these different isolated contexts, which are um, memory protected from interfering with one another. So you build that sort of structure in VibeCoder. I could have one conversation going on in its own file that says, do this, do that, check that, run it. Is there bugs? Okay, fix the bug. And I could have another one, which is the actual implementer being told what to do by the other half. And so these memory segregated parts are playing off of each other in a feedback loop, automated. That's what Claude Code does, which my Vibe Coder does not do. My Vibe Coder software, I'm the person who is directing what happens next. Right. What
Hmm.
Claude Code does is it automates me, the programmer, and me, the programmer, becomes an even higher level. I become like the Steve Jobs yelling at the developer. I'm not the developer anymore. I'm the cat wrangler who's trying to who's trying to get these different virtual developers inside my computer to cooperate on the same project.
Hmm. That's that's pretty wild.
Yeah, and we've only been doing this for like 5 years or 4 years or something now. Like it's amazing to to witness. And yeah, when it comes to computer programming, I'm already kind of sold that this technology is quite viable if the people who are running it have the domain expertise of having lived in the time before LLMs, right?
Right.
20
So
years
this
from
is
now,
it,
when no one has to be a programmer anymore, and all the old bearded guys who used to know how computers work get old and died,
they
what the
won't
fuck
be
are
able
we
to
gonna do?
evaluate.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's the scary thing here. That's what I'm kind of trying to mitigate with my work here.
We've got about 10, maybe 20 years to write good software that will work for the rest of our lives, and then it's gonna the windows out.
And then we just don't, yeah, and then our human sense making apparatus won't even know what the fuck we're looking at in this material world of crazy baroque machines that are beyond our comprehension. Yeah, yeah, it's that's the very real science fictiony prospect. And you know, who needs fiction? Who needs science fiction when you've got the reality of our actual of our actual
True.
material
So,
world right now, you know?
so I've got a sort of cultural question for you, which is I sort of expected more pushback from the Linux community about this, where like they really want to be separate, they want to be like maybe even
Mhm,
air gapped, they want full control.
mhm.
And so are you seeing adoption of LLMs and AI from this community, or is it are most of the
Mhm.
people using your app, sort of
Just
from somewhere else?
just to be clear, no one's using my app but me. I'll be upfront about that. I've been releasing my half-baked toys onto the internet for a year now, and no one has noticed or downloaded them. And last week, this large bandwagon of crypto investor enthusiasts came along and took a cursory, superficial glance at my stuff and said, "This guy's amazing. He's going to go huge," and then bet money on that possibility. I am going to keep doing what I'm doing, but I haven't. Nobody in the development world knows who I am or cares. I'm
So
a
so like if I were to try to do what to install your software, how would I do it?
The only software that I have that's easy for anyone to use right now, if you're already running Linux, is a program which will sync your Palm Pilot. I'm sure you have one. Don't you, Rusty? Will sync your Palm Pilot to your Linux computer. And the software I've released is actually right now, having surveyed the terrain, by far the easiest and most feature filled modern desktop sync solution for this obsolete device that
Mm.
exists, and I whipped it up in like 3 days, and it already does 80% of everything you'd want to do, and that last 20% is going to just push the Palm Pilot to areas it's never been before, and I'm seeking recognition by the retro tech community and the online Palm Pilot communities, and it's only been 24 hours, so I haven't even seen any feedback yet. But
Well, it sounds to me like the Vibe Coder program itself is the thing that people are more interested in because people are already using similar workflows, but it would be nice to not do them in the chat and do them locally on your own machine.
hmm you asked me a question about the firewall, like the Linux or the open source free software community, and the thing is, there's there's a big difference between the free software foundation and the free
Mhm.
software world and what's called the open source community. And the open source community is full of people who work at proprietary tech companies who want to share source code with each other and want to make their resumes look good by releasing projects for the good of the community. And it's programmers helping programmers. Um, that's what open source is. Because I mean, you and I, as typical end users, I'm not, but I oftentimes, am on the same side of the home user. Like, I don't care about having like reading the source code. I just want the program to work, right? Or I
Mhm.
just want the program to not spy on me, or I just want the program to be compatible with other things, right?
Right.
Open source doesn't do anything for you, the end user. Free software does something for the end user because free software lets the end user sue anybody legally, sue them for not giving the source code to any software binaries or executables that they deliver. Um, so companies tend to hype open source because they try to bury and hide the free software world as irrelevant and in the past and minimize the free software world.
Yeah,
Uh,
that worked on me. I had no idea there was a difference between these two things.
yep, yep, yep. Well, there's all the money in the tech world is banking against people knowing the difference between free software, which liberates end users, and open source software, which is a way for programmers at various companies to not reinvent the wheel. Um, and so the loss, right? When I was on the learning about computers on the internet as a teenager, and I was going on Slashdot every day in 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006. These distinctions were very clear. There was a strong ideological free software movement posting every day, like, screw Microsoft, and Microsoft is spelled with a dollar sign for the S and all this stuff, right? And that sort of like avant-garde militant free software ideology has largely disappeared from newer tech communities like Hacker News. Right, there are no militant free software people
Mhm.
responding to every comment, calling bullshit on the open source dilution of the principles of liberty and freedom and end user control. Um, so yeah, I don't. The audience for what I'm saying almost used to exist. I grew up in that world, and these guys have all retired now. you know, and the current crop of tech people
Well,
don't
yeah,
have.
there's a big audience who suddenly coding is available to them because of vibe coding,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
they want a slightly more structured or like an on-ramp to that somehow. Not on-ramp might not be the right metaphor, but
Mhm.
that's
Well,
that's how I see the potential of what you're making.
yeah, I think here are the yes, thank you. And as much as the software matters, I think direction as towards the fundamentals matters as well. And when it comes to vibe coding or coding in general, the first choice you have to make is like, what language am I writing this in? For
Mhm.
what platform? And
Platform.
where
What's platform mean?
platform is a word which is a generalized abstraction, which means what layer of the stack, the computer stack,
So what are
uh,
some examples of platforms?
Windows. So if you want to make a video game,
So Windows, Mac, or Linux,
yes,
more or
those are
less.
operating system platforms, right? If you want to make a video game, you probably want to have it run on Microsoft Windows, and you probably want your graphics to use DirectX because DirectX does the 3D stuff on all the video cards. Um, or if you want to make a video game, you want to write it in you want to run on a web browser. You want kids at school to open Microsoft Edge or Chrome and go over to this website, and you want your game to run in the web browser. 20 years ago, with a game like RuneScape, you would write your video game for Java because all these computers had Java, and you could run a Java applet inside a web browser. Or you'd write for Macromedia Flash, now which became Adobe Flash, right? If you write your game in Flash, then any kid can go on the web browser and go to your website and play the game in the Flash plugin. And now you write your game in HTML5, which has its own, which within JavaScript is now complex enough, right? JavaScript is the language that runs inside of all your web browsers, right? Gmail is written mostly in JavaScript. Everything you do in your web browser is written in JavaScript, and inside JavaScript they have fake CPUs that run assembly. Like there's a full computer recreated
Right.
inside of Chrome and inside of Microsoft Edge and inside of
Mhm.
Firefox, and it has its own 3D engine called like based on OpenGL, right?
Yeah.
So if you can make a game that's 3D, you can do it in a web browser in JavaScript, or you can write it on Windows using DirectX. But now you have to actually install something into Windows. You can't just run
Yeah.
it through a web browser, right?
My friend was telling me something amazing, which is that, the majority of computers, the majority of software runs on emulators.
Yes, everything is translation layers on something else. We've got so many layers of the stack that just
Mhm.
exist to make to hide the bottom of the stack so the program can run in an environment that it thinks that it's in where it's not really there. Absolutely. I think
Well,
most and even your CPU isn't a CPU anymore. Your CPU is inside of itself, its own computer pretending to be a CPU. Like at every layer of the stack, we've introduced these again going back to my presentation, these envelopes, these stable APIs which hide and black box the inner workings of one layer to another, so that each layer exists in its own stable um, closed world through an interface which talks up and talks down, and it sits in the middle, and it doesn't care what's going on above it or below it. It just has to rely on the interface to the upper layer and the lower layer remaining stable, and then it can do its thing. And that's what a computer software stack is: it's many, many, many layers of stable interfaces interacting with its immediate neighbors and with memory protection. And memory protection just means each program isn't allowed to look at the RAM that other programs are using. And your operating system very, very strongly enforces, does not let a program look outside of its own scope in RAM. Um, and
Right.
and computer hacking is entirely trying to trick the operating system into letting you look at the RAM of another program. Because when you do that, you can fuck with the other program, you can steal, you can make a keylogger, you can do whatever, right? So that's what computer security is. Keep all the layers from talking to each other except through their own approved interfaces, which allow them to peacefully coexist in your RAM for the CPU to dance between them all and animate them all together as they were designed.
That's really interesting, and that fits with a metaphor that I've been developing for civilization, but we
Mm.
don't have to go into that. But especially the way that each layer has sort of an element of the whole system and is a miniature. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
but that was all a so that was what a platform is.
yeah,
But you
yes.
were starting with a list of what how you would go about writing a program.
Yeah, if someone who doesn't know anything about programming sits down and says, "I wanna make a game," and they don't know where they wanna start, the LLM is gonna start making a bunch of assumptions, and it'll probably like it'll make the assumptions that lead to the end user being able to use their thing straight away. The fastest route to a working product.
Hmm.
So it might be like, oh, okay, you want to make a game. Do you have Python installed on your computer? No. Oh, okay. Well, how about we just make it in JavaScript? Do you have a web browser installed on your computer? Yes, everyone has a web browser. Okay, great. We'll make a game that runs in your web browser. So now you've been locked into a certain platform that has a certain language. Now we're going to write this program in JavaScript, right? Or we're going to pull in some framework for web development, right?
Yeah,
So now you just said I want to make a game, and now you're a web developer. You don't know
sure.
that, but you're not making a game that runs
Hmm.
that's written in C++ to be compiled on a Windows computer or compiled on a Linux computer or compiled on a Mac. You're writing a game that runs in a web browser, right? There's a million decisions that will be made for you the less you know about what your goal is as a programmer.
Yeah, and that's the structure that Vibe Coder can suggest or encourage.
Yeah, yeah. We need to help users place themselves somewhere within the computer stack, knowing what the trade-offs are of where they're starting. You don't want to
Yeah,
make a program all in Python and then realize that Python is way too slow for the complicated thing that you're trying to do. You know,
I mean,
um,
my thing is always, how can I make this last for 40 years without changing?
that's kind of why I'm writing in C++ and Qt making desktop applications that run on Linux. Because Unix has been kind of stable and complete for 40 years now. It's not going anywhere anytime soon, and it runs on everything, right? Macintosh computers underneath the superficial facade are Unix machines. Um, they've got a bash prompt buried underneath everything. Windows, the NT kernel has, like, when you use modern Windows, there's a with a couple clicks in the settings, you can install a full Linux machine inside of Windows to run Unix programs with. It's called the Windows for Linux subsystem or something. Um, but yeah, now mind you, programs written in a web browser are more lucrative for all parties involved because in the web browser you can have ads and you can have tracking and you can have all the stuff
Well,
that
yeah, but your whole thing
make
is giving giving people the freedom to write their own programs and
yeah.
create their own information environments.
Yeah, a program that runs in that's written in C++ runs on your computer. A program that's written for the web, you're downloading it fresh every time you visit that website from them, and they control it, right? Every time you go gmail.com and hit enter, you download this program written in JavaScript called
Hmm.
Gmail that runs in your browser tab, and Google can do whatever the fuck they want inside the confines of that program that you've downloaded. That's encapsulated in this hypertext document. And lots of programs work that way that don't need to work that way. You don't. If you want to add an appointment to your calendar, there's no reason for you to go on the web and download in your web browser your calendar. It should be on your computer. Like, that's my whole thing with this Palm Pilot. Hey, look, here's my schedule for, like, okay, look, Thursday is payday, and then I had my McLuhan reading group at 11:45, right? Boom, it's on this. Why the hell does it need to be on the internet at all? It's my calendar, right? And I think the most mundane of this is so mundane that people don't realize the importance of, like, do you realize that your life is a series of events that exist in time, and that control over your life is having control and planning capabilities over those events in time, and that if you give control and access to what it is you're going to do tomorrow to some company, then you are now able to, like, that company can now predict you. Everyone worries about ads and tracking your preferences. Dude, you already gave your fucking whole itinerary to the company. Like, what the fuck, the thing you like on Facebook is peanuts compared to, like, the predictability of who the fuck you are and what you're going to do tomorrow, right? Like, like, you already, right? It's like you left the door on your safe wide open. Why are you caring about if someone stole the fucking change out of your ashtray? So
So how do you get, I mean, what would it take to have someone else be able to run VibeCoder on their computer?
that person would have to be familiar right now with compiling software. Um, what I could do is release an easy uh, I could compile some binaries and I could create a simple double click and it runs release executable file. I don't know that people are going to have much fun with it. Um, it's more of an ideological project, a proof of concept than something useful yet. But yeah, we'll be able to. I could right now you have to download the program. You have to have a C++ compiler on your computer, and you need some other libraries installed on your computer. And if you're using Linux, that's easy to set up. If you're using Windows, you got to go through a few websites, download a few programs. The Qt development suite from Qt software will have everything you need. And yeah, you open my project, you hit compile, it spits out an exe file, you double click on it, and then you type in your API code that you paid for from OpenAI to get ChatGPT working inside of it. What I'd
Hmm.
like to do is people with the right hardware can run LLMs locally on the computer, and soon you'll be able to just run it all locally on your computer and talk to your own computer with it. And yeah, there's
Sounds
going to be.
really appealing.
Mhm.
I mean, that sounds like something uh, the extreme free software people could stomach.
Yes,
And
yes.
also, there's lots of. I mean, one of my favorite software projects is 100 Rabbits. You know those guys?
I looked into them a while ago. Well, hold on, let me.
I do. I just love the idea of like they're doing it for practical reasons. They don't have reliable internet. They don't have enough power to like run their power hungry laptops while they're like downloading the Adobe updates. And so they just had to write their own stuff that's super basic. But that, someone could do AI program development fully offline if they're somewhere remote or for whatever reason they don't have a
I saw
reliable
these
internet
guys.
connection.
These guys were. These guys were. I was at the same Lever Planet online 2022. Yeah, these guys, the 100 Rabbits, they were at Lever Planet where I presented as well. Yeah, yeah. Okay, sorry, I cut you off.
No,
Um,
no, that was about it.
Yeah. No, the practical that's it. You have to develop software that practically fits your actual lived situation because nothing you buy off the shelf fits your particular problem. Now, the thing is, the internet is full of people's amateur, like, I need a to-do list. I'm just gonna make one. And they make a to-do list for Android because they have an Android phone. So now they've got this program where you type, hey, okay, buy milk, and then it makes a thing, buy milk, and you hit the box and the check mark goes in, and now you bought milk, right? And that's great. But there are file formats out there for storing to dos, which are compatible with every other complex to do app. And the document on how to encode iCalendar v2do um, uh, file formats, which have priority settings, which have you know um, um, relations to other to dos, so that you can have hierarchy. Like you can have a to do which is your project, and that has sub to dos, which are its children to dos, right? And writing a program that handles all the complexity of the official, world standard to do file format, iCalendar specification, the RFC 5545. I happen to know the RFC reference number. Uh, has been a work that I've spent months trying to fucking understand, right? So a vibe coder wants a to-do list, and they make a program that writes a line and sticks a checkbox next to it so you can mark it off. A software engineer learns the domain that they're entering into, studies the documentation, studies existing implementations, and then creates software that interoperates with this already existing ecosystem, so that when you get an email from someone who's running Microsoft Office 365 and they send you an email with an event attached to it, like you've probably received emails before from usually like companies that have an event attached. Do you accept this invitation? And then you click accept, right in the email, right? That's all built on these standards that I'm trying to implement. What we need for the vibe coding ecosystem is for the people getting into programming to learn how to orient themselves to what already exists so they're not reinventing the wheel, and the standards and the layers of the particular platforms that they're going to be targeting, what their how that limits them or how that enables them, and how their stuff will interoperate with other people's stuff, because maybe you don't want to be using your homemade Android to do app that you made in high school for the rest of your life, and but all your stuff is locked into it already, and you need to export that somewhere to something more useful, right? Uh, uh, that sort of thinking ahead is a cultural issue more than it is a technological issue.
Hmm. But you could have a sort of maybe set of best practices about what you think are the most reliable formal file formats.
Yeah, that would be yes. And if I've got a scheme here, if I've got a game here, it's build to have the credibility to sell people on the idea that the best file formats are the ones which are open and free for people to use without paying royalties, unencumbered by intellectual property. Um, uh, like, for instance, FLAC files and Opus sound files are free for anyone to use without paying royalties. Whereas for a long time on Linux, you couldn't run MP3s because MP3s use technology which had to be licensed from the MPEG group, or right, like the motion picture, whatever it is, company. Oh, right. Everyone who wanted to make an MP3 player had to pay them a couple bucks for the privilege of reading and decoding MP3 files, right? Um, if you want your software to last and be useful in the apocalypse, to be hyperbolic, uh, look for free software, GPL licensed software. Go to the Free Software Foundation at fsf.org, see what they're doing, and use the things that they recommend, and you will be future proofing your stuff. It'll work anywhere, and it'll run long after all the other companies go bankrupt and their secrets are lost, and no one knows how to read their stuff anymore because the engineers all got fired. Yesterday, and your files are now a bunch of useless blobs. Right? That's that would be my advice, Rusty.
That sounds good to me. That's what I'm trying to do.
Cool. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you. I really appreciate your laid back style of just exploring the interesting domain we're here, it's been a wonderful opportunity to talk about what it is I'm doing on the internet.
Thank you.
This has been Clinton Ignatov speaking with Rusty Swarf on January 10th, 2026. Hopefully, not for the last time. Thanks to everyone who's watching, and check out VibeKoder with a K. See you later, guys.